did you know that there are only 3 Nero d'Avola cultivar wines in all of South Africa, and all 3 of them are made in really different styles? The first one was bottled by the Bosman family vineyards in 2014 from the very first mother block of Nero d'Avola in the whole country, which means that the 2024 vintage of any Nero d'Avola wine is in fact the celebration of 1 decade of Nero d'Avola in South Africa.
I didn't even know there was such a thing.
The second Nero d'Avola wine was bottled under the Ayama label, but the fruit came from that very same mother block of Nero d'Avola planted on the Bosman estate in the Wellington wine district. The third Nero d'Avola bottling is the Bosman family vineyards Nero Rosé, which again is produced by the Bosman family vineyards and is made using fruit from that same single mother block of Nero d'Avola planted in Wellington. Incidentally, if you are someone who wants to stay up to speed with this sort of wine geek stuff, then subscribe to the hanDRink Solo YouTube channel, because we have at least 350 videos. And if you're feeling generous, give us a like, because it helps more people to find our content. As we've mentioned before, the Bosman Nero Rosé is made using fruit from the mother block of Nero d'Avola planted in Wellington. It is the only vineyard of its kind in all of South Africa. All of the vines planted in this block were imported from the Vivae Cooperativi Raucedo, or VRC, which is located in the north of Italy. But the genetic material for these vines all came from Sicily in the south of Italy, which is where Nero d'Avola is an indigenous cultivar. Now, these vines were imported and tested and went through plant improvement and were quarantined and finally propagated, all at the hands of the impressively progressive Bosman viticultural team and the Bosman nursery, which is part of the Bosman family vineyards operation. This is a supremely lengthy process. It used to take as many as 7 years. It's been shortened slightly, but you're still looking at roughly 5 years to get a cultivar in, quarantine it, make sure that it doesn't have diseases before you can actually plant it in the ground. And then you have to wait another 3 or 4 years at least before you can get decent grapes from those vines. Now, as you might have guessed, Bosman do not only make the Nero Rosé, but they also make a Nero Red Nero d'Avola. Although it should be noted that this Bosman Nero Red wine leans away from the traditional Sicilian style of Nero d'Avola, and in fact is made in a much gentler style, which makes it really delicious to drink when it's young. Now, while both the Nero Rosé and the Nero Red wine are made using fruit from Bosman family vineyards and using the manpower and mind power of the Bosman family vineyards winemaking team, the brand is actually co-owned by the legendary South African actor and producer Thapelo Mokoena. Now, Thapelo is probably most famous for acting alongside Idris Elba in the Nelson Mandela biopic A Long Walk to Freedom, but he's done other stuff as well. He's acted in Trackers, and he's also acted in the British series Bulletproof. And if it wasn't enough that this brand is co-owned by a veritable movie star, the wine itself is a bit of a TV personality, because this wine has appeared in an episode of Living the Dream with Somizi as part of a celebratory dinner. But just as we saw from Ginny and Georgia, just because you get to be on TV, that doesn't make you awesome. So what we need to do is get into the glass and see what it's like. Now, Nero d'Avola from Sicily is usually a fairly big fruit-driven wine, but it also has some more serious moody elements as well, like bay leaf and licorice. So the question you have to ask when drinking a rosé is, how many of those moody elements live in the skins and will therefore be absent because those skins get removed early on in the winemaking process when producing rosé? Let's give it a sniff and see. Well, I would say almost all of the mood is missing. The nose is supremely clean and it's bustling with sort of cheerful cherry and musk and rosewater and candy floss. And the fruit really is in the red zone. As I said, cherries mostly, a little bit of strawberries. But let's give it a sip and see what it's like on the palate. Well, there's a little more sugar than you might be used to. It's sitting at around 6 grams, which actually is roughly the same as most of the top 10 red wine pinotages in this year's ABSA Top 10 Pinotage Report. But when it's a rosé and there's less tannins going on, you notice that sweetness more. Also, if you want a rosé reference, well, you could probably reference Whispering Angel from Provence, which is arguably the most famous rosé in the entire world. And that has about half a gram of sugar. So there's at least a teaspoon more sugar in this wine per litre. But what this little bit of extra sugar does is lend a beautifully generous, quite nostalgic element of strawberry fruit juice and cherry candy, akin perhaps to something like a sugu or a fruitus. And if you're not South African and you have no idea what either of those things are, well, don't worry about it. It really just is deliciously creamy strawberry chewing candy that pretty much all Saffers grew up with in the 1980s. But it's not all strawberries and cream. There's other stuff as well. There's quite a lovely, juicy cherry acidity to it, and even a hint of blood orange, which interestingly enough is one of the notes that you will pick up on in some of the more elegant styles of Sicilian Nero d'Avola. Perhaps as a parting serving note, I can say that if the sweetness is perhaps higher than you'd like, then remember the lesson we've given previously on temperature and our ability as humans to perceive sweetness. As you chill a wine down, your ability to perceive sweetness is reduced. So if a wine is slightly too sweet, you chill it further. If you feel it's tight and lean and a little bit miserable, you can warm it up a little bit. Either way, the power to balance sweetness and acidity is yours. And that's all we have time for today, but I have left a link to 2 videos about Italian cultivars in South Africa. One of them talks about Sangiovese and the birth of Sangiovese in Africa, and the other one discusses a Nebbiolo from the Breede Kloof. So check those out and be sure to give me feedback.